Welcome to Feminist Question Time, brought to you by Women's Declaration International, the leading global organization defending women's sex-based rights against the threats posed by gender identity ideology. We do have volunteer activists, I'm one of them, including country contacts and from every continent. So please join us. If you like to become a member, you can volunteer and you can donate. Money is always good as well. You can contact us at info@womensdeclaration.com or via your country contact on our website. Okay, we've got a great lineup today. We're going to first start off with Amanda Kovattana, Lierre Keith, and Julie Lane, all from the USA. And Lierre Keith is co-founder and board member of Wolf. She's a radical feminist, food activist, environmentalist, and author of the highly acclaimed book, The Vegetarian Myth, Food Justice and Sustainability. The title of their talk is Who's Afraid of Judith Butler? And it's about how San Francisco TERFs protested a talk given by Judith Butler, handed out information about men in women's prisons to attendees, and we're able to ask an impertinent question that unmasked the underlying homophobia of queer theory and the sacrificing of lesbians in favor of men's rights.
Gail Rubin presented a paper called Thinking Sex at the infamous Barnard Conference. And in it, she argued that sex is oppressed. It's not people that are oppressed, it's sex, because, poor sex, it suffers so. Society creates a binary between what's normal and good and what's abnormal and bad. And she knows this is a problem because, I'm not making this up, no one will defend the, quote, boy lovers, so the men who want to rape children. And this is some kind of tragedy. So we need to break down these binaries between what's good and normal and what's bad and abnormal, because men want to rape children and they're not allowed to. You can go read this article. Okay, I'm not making any of this up. I couldn't. And this is considered the founding document of queer theory, because the queer theorists went on to build this entire edifice called queer theory. And this is their main their main framework. Oppression is not one group materially exploiting another, but the act of labeling anything in a binary. That's the problem. It's not that some people have power over others. It's the binary. So the categories are the problem. All right. Binaries have to be deconstructed through what's called queering. So you transgress the boundaries of categories to render them meaningless. Okay. And this to them is liberation. So this is queer theory in a nutshell. So that happens throughout the 80s. And then we finally get to Judith Butler, and this was her big book, Gender Trouble. So that came out in 1991. So this is the basics, what's in this book. It's a hard slog. You should read it if you can, but it's somebody said it's like wading through cement, and it basically is. We can't name men as oppressors. That's, quote, too totalizing a gesture. It only strengthens that binary. The category woman itself is the problem. There are no real women. Woman is nothing but, quote, a parody without origin. When women unite as a group, they are only reinforcing a problematic category. So women cannot be the subject of feminism. She says that point blank. All we can do is have subversive performances of the self that breaks a binary. So for instance, women refusing men, creating a new life or even a new sexuality with women, that only strengthens the binary. But you know what's subversive? Lesbians who have sex with men. That's what she says, because that queers the category of lesbian. So Butler destroyed the possibility of feminist resistance for an entire generation of college-educated women. She's barely understandable, but she did do that. So what's organizing? You make common cause with the people who share your condition. That is impossible when women don't exist. And when noticing that they might exist only strengthens that big bad binary. This is her latest book. It's a critique of us, very specifically of us, of feminists who reject gender ideology. And then the slide after, so that's the cover of the book. And then the slide after that is a quote directly from the book where she says, Why is freedom so frightening? Is that even the question? Or is it rather, how has freedom been made to seem so frightening that people find themselves longing for authoritarian rule? So yes, she calls us not just authoritarians, but fascists, because we're all so afraid of what's going to happen when, the gender binary breaks down. The entire book is about this. So this is another quote from the book. The weaponization of this fearsome phantasm. See, we're living in fear. That's our trouble, is we're afraid of gender. This fearsome phantasm of gender is authoritarian as at its core. Rolling back progressive legislation is surely fueled by backlash, but backlash describes only the reactive movement in this sense. The project of restoring the world to a time before gender promises a return to a patriarchal dream order that may never have existed, but that occupies the place of history or nature, an order that only a strong state can restore. She says point blank that we're fascists and we're authoritarians. This is the argument of her book. So then she did this interview, and the subject of prisons does come up. So this is a quote from this article. The interviewer says, "In prison, does Butler accept that people assigned male at birth can't be placed in women's prisons just because they identify as women?" And she says, "What would it be if if it weren't self-identification? Who is our expert authority?" Well, she's right, is that this is all nonsense, and the only metric is an internal feeling state. That's what gender identity is. So I guess she and I agree on this point. I just think it's ridiculous, and she thinks it's good. Butler argues that trans women should not be seen as uniquely risky. Well, she's wrong. In fact, men who ID as women are more dangerous, and a much higher percentage of them are, in fact, sexual predators. Male prison guards are a risk. So what she's saying is women are already going to be raped. What's one more? And so are other female inmates. So that's the classic. Women do it too. And it's trans women are placed in a male prison. They, quote, will be raped and will be hurt. So men are allowed to be afraid of male violence and they're allowed to demand protection. Women have to be the human shields. Aren't we missing the reality of male on female violence? Asks the interviewer, and goes on to say in the UK, 99% of female rape victims say the perpetrator was male. 95%, 93% of convicted murderers are men. Aren't women just less violent? And she says, you would be surprised at how many women are battered by their mothers and what in church settings or family settings get sanitized as discipline. So yeah, women do it too. So no need to care about men raping women because women are terrible as well. So it's all just shifting posts and then just sort of sweeping it all under the carpet. None of it matters. These are the people who have made it possible for men to be put into women's prisons, right? And so I want to talk about the situation, particularly in California in the women's prisons. This is the situation in California specifically. We had a law passed called SB 132. It took effect in January of 2023. And it said that any man could identify into the women's prison. And immediately 300 men got on the waiting list. And they were shocked that this happened. Shocked. I don't know why anybody would be shocked. You don't even need to be a feminist. Common sense would tell you that a bunch of men are going to want into the women's prison. My group, Wolf, filed a lawsuit on behalf of 4 of the incarcerated women. Then what happened is there's this man, Tremaine Carroll. He is a sex offender. He was put in the women's prison, and he was given permission to join our lawsuit as an intervener. And what that means is when there's a court case, you have the 2 parties that are arguing. And sometimes a third party comes forward and says, this is going to really affect me, but neither of these parties is actually arguing from my perspective. So I would like to be a party to this. And the court sometimes says, sure, you can be what's called an intervener. So we got an intervener hanging on here. His name is Tremaine Carroll. I will repeat, he is a sex offender. He's a rapist. He kidnapped 2 women and was part of the rape of these women. He is already in the women's prison. And he said, oh, I want to be an intervener. And they went ahead and told him, yes, you can be an intervener. All right, fine. Who's defending him? Lambda Legal and the ACLU. They're on his side. On May 24th, the court dismissed our case on these gets complicated procedural grounds involving the 11th Amendment to the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. But they gave us leave to amend the complaint to change so that we're not, blah, blah. Anyway, it's not hopeless. The legal team is working on this day and night, and we're going to get the court case kind of back on track. But in the meantime, like literally on the day that we are down at the court protesting, what happens is Tremaine Carroll, this man, is being charged with 2 counts of forcible rape and 1 charge of interfering witness tampering, trying to terrorize one of these women not to be the witness against him. Meanwhile, the judge who threw our case out, who dismissed our case, said, sort of as a throwaway, that it was all conjectural, that the harms that we were suggesting would come to women were conjectural. Literally on that day, he has his arraignment in court for raping 2 women in the California prison. But we are told this is just conjectural, right? I mean, my head is just exploding here. So that's where we are in California. Yeah, it's happening, and people don't believe us. They say this can't be happening. It's too crazy. It is happening. It's happening so badly. We have a court case trying to sue California to make it stop. And indeed, this man is up for raping 2 women. Oh, and one of them is pregnant. We, of course, don't get any press on this. The mainstream media still refuses to cover it. You can go to the Wolf website and read all about it, which we'd really appreciate if you want to educate yourself about it. And then the final slide that I have is we do get some feminist press, and I really, really appreciate the women at Redux and everything they do. But this is pretty much, all we get is just the feminists who already hear about how horrible it is, and we still can't break through to the mainstream media. So my final slide. So we decided that there's this great, the women organized in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, because Judith Butler was coming. This is why we have a problem with Judith Butler, why I was really happy to go to this protest, even though it was a 7-hour drive for me.
Are you guys attending?
Yeah.
I'm not. Good job. Good job. Thank you.
We just don't want men in women's prisons. Why do you think that's okay? Why do you think it's okay? Are you?
Ask some questions.
Self-ID is a myth. All men are men, all women are women. Judith Butler doesn't even make sense. Listen to her words. She doesn't even make sense. Have a great time at the show.
One of the things she said was
There's only men and women in the world.
Yes, for sure. Hey guys.
Nope. You don't need consent. You know who does need consent? Women who are in women-only prisons, but males are in the... Oh no. The truth sucks. It's scary. Protect women. Women.
No males in women's jail. Do you think men belong in women's prisons? Judith Butler does. Men being women's
Why are men in women's prisons right now?
I'm not going to shut up. Women are getting raped right now. Only men can get women pregnant in women's prison. Judith Butler. Only men can get women pregnant. Happening today. There's a lawsuit right now. 2 women have been pregnant and raped. Men identifying as women's prison.
Yeah, I get it.
Butler supports that.
I get it.
Please ask her about it.
I will.
Thank you. Thanks for talking. Please look into this. The most vulnerable women in the world, she hates them. $400,000 for word salad at UC Berkeley. I would love to. Come on back and talk.
All right, let's have a talk.
Come on.
Let's have a talk.
That's right. Why don't you get back in there and debate Judith Butler then?
She can't debate. She's a word salad queen. This is true, though. You didn't.
And I'm going to turn it over to Julie to talk about what happened next once we got there.
We have such an incredible group, and people are tuned in to all kinds of stuff around the world. So somebody makes a suggestion and we jump on board and say, let's go. And somebody in our group said, hey, Judith Butler's coming to San Francisco. And I remember when I was in anthropology class at my college, I had to read a lot of Judith Butler and Foucault. I remember Foucault as the main guy I had to read. And of course, this was a long time ago, guys, and I did not know what was going on at that time. I was, I wasn't a wise 50-year-old, that's for sure. 55 now. But Judith Butler's terrible, and the most I can remember about her is that she just spouts word salads and nobody understood what the hell she was talking about. So I was willing to go protest just on that basis. But then knowing how much she hates women, I was really excited to go to this one. We had a great group of women there, and we decided, one of us, brilliant, the one who kind of brought it all up, designed a bunch of cards that we could hand out with quotes from Judith Butler that just were batshit and showed how much she hated women. So we had people handing out cards, and then a bunch of us holding signs, and a couple people videotaping. And we just tried to talk to people as they were walking in. Mostly they just sneered at us. But some just approached me and flipped me off or said, "You're haters, get out of here." They just really, really didn't like us. And so I just kind of started asking questions and just shouting out, "Judith Butler is a word salad. And why would you pay to see this woman? She makes $400,000 to spout word salads, and she hates you." And I would pick out lesbians because I could tell, because I have a gaydar. And I would say, "Hey, you're a lesbian and you're super cute, but Judith Butler hates you. Please don't go in there." But they did anyway. So that was the beginning. Not a lot of engagement, but I think we sauced people up a little bit, and people were inside and they had carded like the bathrooms and put our messages in there where people could find them. And apparently a lot of people read these cards. I don't know what all the questions were, but I know that Amanda was able to get in a question pretty early on, I think.
Amanda came out in 1976 during the emergence of the San Francisco gay liberation movement. She spoke at the Kelly J. Keene Let Women Speak event in 2022, where she met members of the San Francisco Turf Central. Her book, The Unexpected Penis, is a primer on trans ideology from a lesbian perspective. Julie Lane is co-founder of San Francisco Turf Central, former college scholarship athlete, lesbian Democrat, San Francisco fighting for sex realism.
I hadn't actually planned on going in to see Judith Butler. I mean, why was I going to pay to be abused? I never read any of Judith Butler, but I did catch up with her by reading Sheila Jeffrey's book, Unpacking Queer Politics, sorry. That was very helpful. And it helped me to catch up with how queer theory had taken over feminism, and told me everything I needed to know about Judith Butler as well. So it wasn't intending to do anything but just listen and take notes and critique what she was saying. But because we met up before, we were having dinner, and one of our leaders said, "Oh, you must have a question because you're the most likely to be called upon, being, intersectional." So I was like trying to think of, well, what kind of question? Because I'm a lesbian, I was in the opportune position to ask a question as a lesbian. So I looked at the card that we had made up of all the quotes that were pertinent. And we had the quote, "What is the wound to lesbianism if the category of women is expanded to include trans women?" So I was going to challenge her on that. Why then couldn't we lesbians just have free spaces? And I was coached on it. I'm not an avid public speaker. It scares me to death. So Derek Jensen was there with Lierre, and he was coaching me and rehearsing me to go in, which helped a lot. And then our founder, who had suggested I formulate a question, was telling me, "You need to put your hand up right away." So I was prepared and went in. I also chose my outfit to, be non-binary. I had heard that non-binary people like to dress in pirate shirts and Victorian costume, kind of borrowing from male attire from the past. So we happened to be taking photographs in front of the Judith Butler poster, and a man walked by who asked, oh, are you going to see Butler? And we said yes. And it actually turned out he was the man who was the usher who would hold the microphone. So he already had an idea of who I was, and he possibly thought I was a fan. So I was called on first as soon as the Q&A was announced, and I shot up my hand, and we were in the front row. So that helped a lot. So he came to give me the microphone. And since I had been listening to what all she had to say, it just made me madder and madder that she was characterizing feminists as part of the right wing, and that we were irrational, we had irrational fears. And I also mentioned that I have a black belt and have been training for 30 years. So it wasn't male violence that I feared exactly. I just was coming from a perspective of why can't we socialize as lesbians in penis-free space? So that's how I came to pop the question, as it were. If gender is to liberate us, why can't I, as a lesbian, have a dick-free space? A space that is for women only, without penises.
Do that in your home.
Exactly.
I mean, I hope and trust that you don't have a son with a penis, but I think you are free to say that. You're free to say it here, and you're free to say it out loud. I do wonder, maybe you wonder sometimes too, about what is the danger of the penis exactly? I mean, I understand the revolting and abhorrent character of rape. I understand that women can be raped by a man with a penis, or other men can be raped by a man with a penis, but those same women, those same men may also love somebody with a penis or feel loved by them. The penis is not the dangerous instrument or the source of violence. It's mobilized in the service of violence under certain gender norms, under certain gender regimes, where men are taught to be a certain way, or where boys are raised in a certain way, or where the culture and the society, which is full of militarism and violence, encourages that. I think that we don't, at least I don't, reduce people to their anatomical parts or their biological parts. They're given meaning and they're given power within the worlds in which we live, but because as a feminist I believe in rebuilding the world of power in the direction of greater equality and freedom and non-violence, I think that it's really important to see that those who do have penises, men, women, non-binary people, all of them, live with them and live them in different ways, and some never in relation to violence. So maybe we need to think a little bit more about where violence comes from, because like you, I don't want to be threatened by violence.
She basically hung herself with her own words, and we were on it. We had it on our Twitter feed the next day, and it just took off. And And so I got in the Daily Mail with just our tweets. Nobody called us or anything to get my opinion or what. I had already tweeted what I felt about the event. So that seemed to be enough to get me in there. And one of our Women Are Real tweets mentioned my book, The Unexpected Penis Conversations on a Gender Trail, which granted me 7 sales. So even being viral, people don't go to books exactly. But I was very pleased that I had made such an impact, that by this confluence of having so much support and circumstance, that extra ticket still needing to be claimed, being right place, right time. And that was basically it. That's the story.
As some of you may know, I do the Twitter, the WDI Twitter. And we have now 13,600 followers, which is a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal. We're not as popular as, you know, J.K. Rowling, but yeah, we're rolling along. And so I picked out from this last week just some of the things that caught my eye. You know, Twitter is this space where there's some wonderful things, there's some ugly things, there's some nasty things. I try not to share too much of the nasty things because they are kind of disturbing. So this week, there was the 52nd birthday of Title IX. And Marcy Smith posted, "I took for granted when a full athletic scholarship opened doors for me to accomplish my dreams. Now I fight every day for my daughter to have the same opportunity to become an NCCA champion someday too." Okay, then there are some things that I just find just really so snarky. This woman, Jennifer, who responded to somebody saying individuals with vaginal anatomy, "I am at a loss for words. I'm a tube of toothpaste all squeezed out." I totally related to that image. Sometimes I feel like that when I look at the Twitter feed. And Vaishnavi, our video magic maker, posted there was some quote, "Not every single woman has a scary story about a man." Yes, they do. I promise you they do. You know, I thought about this one because it's like, I don't know a woman who hasn't. And it's not that we talk about it daily, but it is just like, yeah, I mean, a scary story. It's not difficult. And this was an event, this was at, you know, a recent Posey Parker Let Women Speak event. I think it was Brighton. And, you know, this a horrible thing happened, which this woman posted against. When a mob chased a group of women's rights campaigners into a shop, lest they be killed by angry men, and this is how the shop responds the next day. Pathetic, absolutely pathetic. You know, this place goes to the length of writing this kind of stuff on the store. I mean, you know, no words. And WDI España, I try to repost from our sister organizations, thanked Reem Assamlem, bad pronunciation on that, because she was reading a recent report on prostitution as violence against women. She's doing some incredible work with the United Nations Human Rights Council, even though the United Nations is not doing such incredible work as regards women's sex-based rights, unfortunately, still. Then J.K. Rowling, boy. she posts the wildest, the greatest things. She usually is commenting back to somebody because she gets a lot of comments. Somebody wrote, "You're actually radicalized past the point of salvation, aren't you?" And she writes back, "I am, yes. My husband called a priest last year and found out the exorcism would cost 500 pounds. I'm not saying Neil's tight, but he chose to buy a bottle of holy water and do it himself, which is why I'm still possessed of a demon that refuses to believe that women have dicks." This is a woman that she just goes for it. She has a lot to lose, like all celebrities have. She has a lot to defend herself, but still, she has a lot to lose. So I really like what she posts and repost it myself. Then this is one of our favorite German colleagues, Rona. She wrote, she tweets regularly about insanity in Germany. Many women in Germany are not aware of what a loss of women's rights means and how fragile these rights are. It is easy to give away something you are used to and believe is secure because you don't know anything different. How true that is, how really true that is. She's a mom and has been in court battles, and it just is on the front line in Germany and on Twitter as well. Let's see. Women's Rights Network in Afghanistan commented on Angela Jones' a post, "What do the Taliban and the UN and Western democracies," in quotes, "have in common? Banning women from speaking up about their rights. You are wrong if you think we are any better than the Taliban. It's a slippery slope and we are halfway down the slide." And yes, so just to make sure that we're clear that, yeah, things are ugly in Afghanistan, but let's be real about where we are in our Western countries in terms of our rights. And then Redux talks about this law that passed, AB 955. As Lierre said, California is just out to lunch. I mean, it's really ugly here on some levels in terms of the rest of the states. California lawmakers have just passed a bill that would make it illegal for schools to tell parents about their own children's sexuality or gender identity. The debate was heated, with fights breaking out during the hearing leading up to the vote. Yesterday, trans-identified male activist, Transgender Law Center board member Ebony Harper called Adrian Adamchikova of Women Are Real a gender-critical monster while she testified against the bill. Today, Representative Corey Jackson, Democrat, attempted to physically confront Representative Bill Assaili, Republican, while he expressed concerns about the bill. AB 1955 will now be presented to Governor Gavin Newsom to be signed into law, and it's likely he will sign it. I don't get too deep into these when I read. I really just skim things because it's, as you probably know, it comes by really fast. There's a lot going on weekly, daily in Twitter. And then Feminists in Catalonia. On June 15th, the state abolitionist Congress, organized by the Platform for the Abolition of Prostitution, was held, and a large delegation of women from Feminists of Catalonia participated. Here's a small chronicle. Oops, where is my? And that's it for my presentation. But I also have two videos I would like to share. This was posted by Rachel Wong. She's a, let's see here, CEO of Women's Forum Australia. The Victorian government's new tax-funded campaign is gaslighting in the extreme. According to this ad, women should put the feelings of men above our own instincts, comfort, safety, and be inclusive and kind to men invading our spaces. So let me play this video. This is an ad. So Lynn Hurst posted, these fabulous working class women who work as nurses in the NHS have taken out legal action against their employee, NHS Darlington. Support their fight and please share this and let people know about what these women are going through. And I'll let them speak so you can find out.
You come into work, you scan in the changing room before you start to undress. It's just uncomfortable, very uncomfortable.
It's disgraceful that nurses are ending up in tears prior to their shift. I mean, we are there to be an emotional support for our patients who are about to undergo surgery. And it's very difficult to do that if you're in a state of distress from having to change in front of a male.
We just want a safe space for us, a female-only space for us to get changed.
Now I know the trust policy, anybody can be in
Well,
there.
that's the problem.
You know, anyone can identify as female can use that changing room.
I don't want to get changed in front of a biological man, and I don't want to see him getting changed neither. That's not what I want to see when I come into work.
And we just wanted to talk about this and raise this issue so that women are aware that there may be policies in their workplace, particularly in the NHS. We want other nurses to be aware of what their transgender policy is.
So now we have Jo Brew. It's going to come on screen, I think, and she's going to be giving us a short report about Pride by the Ponds. Jo Brew.
I'll give a very short report about Bernadette O'Malley standing for Party for Women, which is absolutely brilliant. And then I'm going to play 3 videos, one from Australia, one from New Zealand, and one from the United States. So they're news updates. I'll just tell you what Bernadette did. So Bernadette normally does tech, but she's out campaigning in Southwest Hertfordshire, which is one of the constituencies where people are standing for election on Thursday in the UK. She's standing for Party for Women, and I went on Monday along with quite a few women and actually some men who support Bernadette to hear her in what's called a hustings in the UK. So questions are asked of the political candidates, and the candidates have to answer. And she was just absolutely brilliant. There'd be questions. They had no idea what the question would be. They'd say things like, what is your political party going to do about sewage in the River Chess? And Bernadette just thought on her feet really quickly and would say, well, sewage, it's very important that we have good data on sewage, and we don't want sewage in the River Chess at all. And it's also very important that we have good data on how many men are in women's prisons or on single-sex spaces. She was just there were loads of questions, and she just brought everything round to the importance of sex over gender identity. And she gradually got more and more people in the room clapping. So it started off with just there were 2 of us in the middle, and then more and more and more people were clapping. And as she made the arguments that it is dangerous for women and unfair for us to have men who say they're women doing intimate searches or doing intimate care in hospitals, more and more people were clapping, and more women. So it's just, it's the best political meeting I've been to ever in my life. I was so happy that she's doing this standing. And then the best clap she got, which was totally brilliant, was when she gave the slogan of Party of Women, which is she somehow managed to let herself say it, doing that transformation of the question into something that was about our issue. When she said, no woman has a penis, no man has a vagina, non-binary is nonsense, and transitioning children is a form of child abuse. Got about 70% of the audience clapping loudly and cheering. And I felt like this is really, really significant that it's happening. There are 15 candidates and Bernadette's one of them, which is why the tech's not going so well today for us because I'm doing it. Anyway, go Bernadette, as someone said. And there's another on Monday, so I'm going to go along to that. And well, just brilliant. And I would recommend anyone who's thinking, if this does keep going, thinking of standing, it's absolutely great. Okay, I'm now going to play you the video for the news from the United States.
I was going to start off with the big news about the U.S. Supreme Court, but I'm going to let Kara take that away in just a minute. She has a lot more expertise in that area. So moving on Friday, U.S. signatories were invited to join Kara, along with special guests Riley Gaines and Paula Scanlon, for a webinar during which recent developments regarding Title IX were discussed. The webinar, Let's Talk Title IX, was recorded and hopefully will be available on our YouTube channel soon. The Our Bodies, Our Sports Take Back Title IX bus tour most recently held events in Columbus, Ohio, Charleston, West Virginia, and Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Unfortunately, following the Chapel Hill event, IWF reported that overnight vandals violated nearly every inch of the bus, stating that it had been egged and defaced with profanity and anti-woman messages. They attributed the attack to radical gender ideologues on a mission to erase womanhood who sought to silence the women speaking up. Undaunted, the tour continues with the rally scheduled later today in Washington, D.C., during which Kara and board member Irene Lawrence are scheduled to speak. The tour ends its June run with stops in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and Nashville, Tennessee, on the 27th and 28th, respectively. As anticipated, Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs has vetoed SB 1511, the Detransitioner Bill of Rights. Most disappointingly, she did so with a single-line explanation, which reads, "This bill is unnecessary and would create a privacy risk for patients." In a somewhat alarming development, it's been reported that Casey Goonan, the man suspected of firebombing a Berkeley campus police car and carrying out other arson incidents on university grounds, allegedly in retaliation for police actions against Gaza solidarity encampments, is the same man who was arrested for vandalizing the Hilton Hotel sign with a hammer during a protest outside of our convention in San Francisco last year. Goonan has been arrested and was scheduled to appear Thursday in Alameda County Court for arraignment on arson charges. His bail has been set at $1 million. Last week, I spoke about Eitan Haim, the whistleblower now facing a 4-count felony indictment for revealing that Texas Children's Hospital had secretly continued medicalizing minors after publicly pledging to stop all such interventions. The indictment alleges Haim obtained unauthorized access to personal information of pediatric patients under false pretenses and with intent to cause malicious harm to TCH. If convicted, he could receive up to 10 years in federal prison and be fined a maximum of $250,000. At his arraignment on Monday, Dr. Haim pleaded not guilty to the charges against him, and a fund set up for his legal defense has now reached over $848,000 in donations. This week, Christopher Rufo at the City Journal broke the story about another Texas Children's Hospital whistleblower who has come forward. Registered nurse Vanessa Sivage alleges that doctors at the hospital's gender clinic violated Texas law by illegally billing Medicaid for gender-affirming treatments. Should air quote that. The Medicaid fraud claims are currently being investigated by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. And finally, Bruce Blakeman, the Nassau County executive who earlier this year issued an executive order prohibiting male athletes from competing against girls at all 100 sports facilities run by the county, is persisting in his efforts to protect women's sports. Last month, his executive order was struck down by the Nassau County Supreme Court on grounds that the order exceeded his authority. Blakeman responded by introducing legislation that would accomplish the same thing. 2 weeks ago, the bill advanced out of committee and is slated to move to a vote before the full legislature, which gets underway on June 24th. The Republican-dominated legislature is expected to pass the latest bill into law, county law that is, and of course the New York Civil Liberties Union has already threatened legal action if the county continues to push the measure forward. And that's all I have today. Thank you.
So the next one is Megan from Australia.
The Queensland Births, Deaths and Marriages Registration Act came into effect on the 24th of June. The law allows a person to alter their sex on legal documents such as their birth certificate to align with what they say their gender identity is. This includes non-binary gender identities, so there are more options than just changing from female to male or male to female. Parents can choose also how they identify themselves in their parenting role on their child's birth certificate. So a woman, for example, could choose to be listed as the father. A man could choose to be listed as the mother. And someone with court-ordered parental responsibility for a child can make applications on that child's behalf as well. On the 20th of June, journalist Bernard Lane published the results of his FOI request that showed that Australia's health minister was actually advised by his staff on the 16th of April, after publication of the Cass Review, that it was relevant to Australian gender treatment and that the Australian guidelines had basically failed review. The advice to the minister also provided general warnings regarding interventions such as puberty blockers, saying that there is a lack of robust evidence on the long-term benefits and outcomes. Since then, however, the minister has claimed publicly that Cass is not relevant to Australia because of, quote, different care pathways. And a health department official told Parliament in June that the Australian environment was different from the UK. Note that in 2023, our guidelines actually became even more lax and advised GPs to commence hormone therapy on teenagers without multidisciplinary backup or specialists if they felt they had sufficient expertise or skill. This minister is the one that the Tasmanian government has asked to conduct an inquiry into child gender interventions, but note that they are from different political parties. There was a good Herald Sun report on children being socially transitioned at schools and parents not being informed. June has been a month in Australia for media articles. There is no media blackout anymore. 2 cases regarding the Sex Discrimination Act are still on foot. Lesbian Action Group is coming up and Tickle and Giggle should hopefully receive its judgment next month. 3 family court matters regarding child gender intervention that I know of. 1 vilification and discrimination case for misgendering and criticising a man feeding his baby chemically stimulated discharge. At least 1 wrongful dismissal matter for GC Views. I might be forgetting some, but there are a number of important court cases in Australia to keep an eye on over the next 6 months. A coronial inquest into the suicides of 5 people who identified as trans in and around 2021 is ongoing in Victoria. Last week, it was expanded in response to findings that 1 man had been damaged by an orchiectomy procedure done by an inexperienced backyard operator, and that this damage may have contributed to the decision to suicide. The reporting has focused blame on the barriers to accessing these kinds of surgeries through authorised medical providers. So the Premier said, what for me was really distressing in reading that report was that young transgender people feel that they couldn't get the support they need in more formal systems. We have to work very, very hard to provide them with care and support and love. So it's being used to support more intervention. Dr. Cass is giving a webinar with the National Association of Practicing Psychiatrists on the 2nd of July, and registrations are still open. And a member of the New South Wales Legislative Council, Greg Donnelly, gave a speech in Parliament in support of women's sports and has launched a public petition against the still on foot Equality Bill for New South Wales residents. It's open until the 10th of September in response to the committee's handballing of the issue back to Parliament for further debate, but it's a parliamentary petition, so only New South Wales residents can sign it. Thanks very much.
So we've got now a report from New Zealand.
Hi, I'm Shemaine Delavaris from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Okay, a lot of material here today. The first thing was there are plans for pretty much a giant brothel in Queenstown, which is a very scenic area of the country. Oral submissions are being made, and the Catherine Healy from the Sex Workers Collective in New Zealand has spoke in favour of the changes. Of course, it's a full decrim environment. Just a note that in 2003, the Prostitution Reform Bill, which brought in full decrim into Aotearoa, was brought in and pushed by our first cross-dressing male MP, Georgina Bayer. So she or he gifted us with that particular form of legislation. But there's been huge pushback from, particularly from Wahine Toa Rising, which is a prostitutes advocacy collective, which is fully against the decriminalisation. And they are lobbying and fighting against Queenstown's decision to open up what is said to has the potential to be New Zealand's largest brothel, or the largest brothel in the South Pacific. Mm-hmm. We've got Sal Grover coming over, and we're on the 19th of, no, it can't be on the 19th of June, but the tickets went on sale on the 19th of June. So that's a major event coming up, as well as the Women's Rights Party annual conference. And there are a number of important speakers. Sal will actually be zooming into the conference. And among the other speakers, there's Di Landry from Mana Wahine Kōrero, who are a Indigenous Māori Wahine women's group that vehemently oppose sex self-ID in New Zealand. At the moment, one of the major issues being kicked around Parliament is the question New Zealand First are pushing for the coalition government to come through on its promise to ban men from entering female sports. But there seems to be no appetite for it at all, apart from New Zealand First, with the government saying that it's not going to make any changes to that. And there's been quite a Twitter storm over comments made by Labour Party MP Willie Jackson, pretty much saying, who cares about women's sports? It's not the All Blacks, it's not the Warriors. You know, the more transgender players, the better. So that's been quite a thing. Resist Gender Education has published an open letter to the Ministry of Education countering the claims of the Mental Health Foundation about the RSC guidelines and asking the ministry to remove them. And it's signed by a large number of gender critical groups, including WDI. So also the Law Commission's proposals about gender in the Human Rights Act is coming up on the 20th, well, late June, that'll be tomorrow. I'm sorry, I've got another note here. Speak Up for Women are doing Zoom workshops about supporting gender they've got, but you know, I'm not sure about that. Going into the Human Rights Act on the grounds of, about supporting gender going into the Human Rights Act on the grounds that they think that this provides the opportunity to clearly define sex in such legislation. So that's all from New Zealand today. Thanks.